Welcome to week 4 of the Aftertalk, where each week we are going through our Love, Sex, and Marriage series, and today is our last one. I can't believe it. If you haven't been watching with us, my name is Jayleen, this is Zach, and we are joined with Pastor JJ and Pastor Liz, who just team taught today.
Let's go.
Do you guys enjoy that? Like, do you like sermon prepping together?
You know, it's a lot of fun. I was just telling Zach on the way in, as fun as it is, sometimes that's the problem. It's too much fun, and then we forget that we have, like, a timer to hit.
Right.
And so at our church, like, the timer is very much the thing, and so we're
sure.
just having too much fun sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, it's always fun to do.
Awesome. Well, speaking of the message, this message was called Picking Up the Pieces, talking all about heartbreak and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a lot of the conversation was around spouses and heartbreak.
Yeah.
But does the same advice apply to somebody that is single, would you say?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really where a lot of our, I would say, theology of heartbreak comes from. It's not from God. It's from our experiences when we're single. And we
Yeah.
oftentimes take into our relationships what we learn from when we're single. And so, and I was talking with John Holt, actually one of the guys who was helping recording this, and he said something in the back when we were deciding what sermon to post on YouTube. He was like, man, as a single person, this was really helpful for me. Because one of the things that you said that was an idea that stuck with me was that heartbreak is inevitable. So, like, I might not be married right now, but I am going to have my heart broken at some point in this relationship. Like, it's going to happen.
That's good.
When that happens, I'm taking notes now so that I can prepare.
Yeah.
And so that really is what you can only do. You cannot prevent, you can prepare. Me personally, I 2 serious relationships before Pastor Liz, and both of them cheated on me. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
As I was preparing for this podcast, I'm like, it's a miracle that I came out of this
Right.
with my sanity, and although I definitely have some other issues. But I didn't want to ask y'all that question, the host here, and you, Pastor Liz, I kind of know. Have you ever experienced heartbreak before? Zach, if so, how many times? Feel free to share whatever you want to share, not share. They might be watching.
Yeah, I've had my heart broken many times, actually. Like, probably way too many times.
Oh, man.
Youngest time. What was the youngest? Like,
Youngest
how young were
time,
you?
I mean...
Because it's devastating when you're 13 even. It's like at the
Oh, I was
moment.
gonna say 12.
Yeah, there.
So
It's
yeah,
devastating.
like at
You're like,
that
I'm
point in
never-
time, you're like, oh, this is the end of the
It's the
world.
end of
Yeah.
the
Even
world.
when you're 18, it feels like it's the end of the
Isn't that
world.
crazy?
And then you get to be like 28, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe actually like these things do happen because
Yes.
there's something better for me.
Yeah.
And I remember my
Yeah.
cousin taught me that when I was like 18. He's like, hey, anytime that you are in a relationship that ends, it just means that there's a better one coming for
that's
you.
so
Yeah.
So
good.
like, what can you learn from it
Right.
and
Yeah.
take that into the new
That's
one?
good.
That's so good. So
Yeah.
like 4 breakups.
Yeah.
And the first one was when you grew 12.
when I was like 12.
It's so true.
Yeah.
They, you think everyone is the end of the world,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
they just keep getting
100%.
better. I
Exactly.
kind of know your stories, but what about your heartbreak?
Yeah, I remember my last heartbreak. He doesn't like me talking about
I
my
don't like you talking about your
ex-boyfriend.
ex-boyfriend.
The other
You're-
day, the
Don't know
kids were
why.
asking
Actually,
me
they don't
questions,
exist.
and I was like, I can't answer them in front of Dad because you don't want to hear it. But anyways, the last one before you, I remember just crying in my room, and like I just was like, kind of like what we preached about. I was like, I don't know that I ever want to be in a relationship again because it hurts so bad. But my dad said something that was so good. He walked in the room and he was like, and at the time I'm like, Dad, you're gonna say that because you're my dad, but it stayed in my head because he was like, I think you're just not picking the right person. Like, and I'm like, yeah,
True.
but you're saying that because you don't think anybody's good enough for me. He's like, no, like, you just, and it's not even always just picking the right person, but they just weren't meant for you. So heartbreak is inevitable even when you're dating if you really get close, because if they're not the person that you're going to marry, someone's heart's going to get broken because
Yeah.
you're going
Yeah.
to break the relationship.
yeah.
Right.
Heartbreak comes from a relationship that's separated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely that really helped me understand that, like, it's just, it's going to happen, but it's still worth it
Yeah.
to go through the process.
And it's also on both sides. Like,
Right.
if you're the one
yeah.
breaking the heart,
Yeah.
like, you're also
Right.
becoming
Yeah,
heartbroken.
that guy,
Yeah,
I
for
was the one that
sure.
actually broke up
For
with
sure.
him, but I was
It
still
still hurts.
heartbroken.
Yeah.
because I
Absolutely.
cared for him.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Jayleen said she would opt out of this one pre-production meeting. This next question.
How do you say opt out? It's fine.
She's never had her heart broken.
Yeah. No, I had one. I was in 2 relationships prior to the one I'm in now, and only one of them I felt like heartbroken with. And I was 18 years old. It did feel like the end of the world. I was like, oh my gosh, he cheated on me as well. And so there's layers to that. Like if
Yeah.
you've been cheated on, it's like it's
Yeah.
just not that the relationship ended. There's so much that you work through after that. But I do remember thinking, man, if I was this happy with the wrong person,
Yeah.
I can't imagine how happy I'm gonna be with the right person.
Right. Yeah.
And I heard in a show one time, it's so cliche, but it was so true that if I experience a heartbreak, then that means I'm one step closer to the person that I am gonna be
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
for the long run.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was encouraging.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
say that, I think of Rascal Flats right away.
I don't know.
God bless the broken road
Oh,
that led me straight to you.
Oh, literally.
that's his version. Of, I don't know the
Yeah,
words.
that's
So
all-
I'm
that's
just
all I
gonna-
know.
Yeah.
That's all
hum it.
anyone knows. I
I
feel
hum it.
like.
Anyway,
Yeah.
to the questions.
Yeah, so something that Pastor Liz was talking about was the inner vow that you make, that you like tell yourself.
Yeah.
And you specifically said when you make a foolish inner vow, you become the God of that situation.
So good.
I thought that was so good. And a question that I wanted to ask you was how do we avoid making an idol out of our emotions?
Mm.
Because I feel like the temptation when we get heartbroken is you focus so much on your anger or
Yeah.
your sadness. And if you're
Yeah.
not careful,
Right.
that can become your God.
Yeah.
And so, how do we avoid that? And if we've already done that, there's ways to get out of that. And so,
Right.
what would you speak to someone
Yeah,
who
I
feels
think
that way?
we had talked about this too, that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be upset. Like those are emotions that you do need to process. Like we talked about when we lost our son, like it would not be okay to just keep going and act like nothing happened. You need to feel the sadness. And he also talked about how like it's relatable to pooping. Like it sounds funny, but like
Yeah.
you got to keep the good and get rid of the bad. So going through that emotion is fine. When it becomes a problem is when you make that inner vow, like I will never, or I will always. And so something that I had touched on too was just the idea that if you don't know if the inner vow you're making is a bad idea, then just go to the Bible.
Yeah,
Like
that's good.
one of the things that I was able to say it in some of the sermons, some not, is like sometimes people get church hurt. And then they're like, and if you don't know what church hurt means, it just basically means you were hurt by someone in the church. And they're like, oh, church is full of hypocrites. And so they'll say things like, I will never go to church again. But to make a statement like that is a bad idea because Hebrews talks about that. 10:25, it says, don't give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. So it's a good idea. That's why you should stay in your word because
Yeah.
the word will tell you some of the things that maybe your inner vows are going contrary to the word. Like
Yeah.
you might think that people in church are hypocrites, but you're not perfect yourself.
For
None of
sure.
us are.
Yeah.
And the only difference between people who are in church or out of church are the people who are in church know that they're messed up and they need God. And so you just do that. Just follow the word. And if you're confused about it and you still don't know, then seek counsel. But to make a vow like that, it's just like we were even in marriage night and we were talking about don't say things like you always or you never.
Yeah, like
those like
absolutes.
really strong statements are usually those statements that put you in a bad place. And that can keep you from the blessings that God has for you. Because
Yeah.
in church, you'll find community and you won't be isolated. And those are the things that you need.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like when you're in that broken spot, that it's so easy to like stay in that broken spot and feed it because so much music and movies and everything are built around it. So it's like, yeah, when I'm sad, I'm going to listen to sad music. But in
Right.
reality, that's like causing you even more harm
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah,
keeping
so
you there
true.
instead of helping you grow out of it.
Right.
So
I think the two things we do with emotions, either we bury them or we drown in them.
yeah.
And really, we need to sit in them. And that's like the middle ground, right? Sitting in it. The difference between drowning in and sitting in it is that I'm not going to let it paralyze me, overwhelm me, pretty much paralyze. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to process it. So not moving on so quickly that you miss the lesson and not staying so stuck that you can't move forward. And
Yeah.
it's a delicate balance, but emotions are good things. That was something that was a revelation for me as I was in preparation for this message. I was like, why would God create sadness?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If every emotion, by the way, is of God.
Right.
The enemy perverts those emotions.
Right.
Jealousy is God's version of wanting what's yours. Coveting is the devil's perversion, wanting what doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anger is God's an emotion that God gives for righteous indignation. Rage is the devil's perversion
Right.
of anger, right? So
Right.
every emotion has a perversion or a shadow side to it. But God gives us those dark emotions. We quote unquote dark because we don't like them. Sadness, anger. But the reason why he gives it to us is so we can process pain.
Yeah.
Right.
It's how we process. And you know what? If you didn't believe the Bible, just watch Inside Out.
Yeah.
That's literally what I was
Bro.
thinking of. Yeah.
Sadness was the hero, bro.
She was.
Sadness was the
yeah,
hero.
Yeah.
She kept shutting off sadness. She kept shutting off sadness,
Yeah,
man.
but you needed it.
Sadness is what processes that
Right.
thing. So if you've been avoiding those emotions and you're listening to this podcast, you know, pause this
Mhm.
and you need to sit with that and
Yeah.
feel that so that you can get that through you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what helps it not control you.
Yeah.
When you sit with it, like, okay, I'm addressing it. This is not going to be my master. Like, this
Right.
is not going to be,
Yeah.
whether you're at work, sometimes you get so overwhelmed, or when you have such those deep emotions, it can come out in
Right.
so many ways if you're not sitting with it and dealing with
Right.
it. And so I think that's so helpful.
So good.
Mhm.
Awesome. We had so many questions submitted this week, you
Yeah.
guys.
Gosh.
So thank you guys for submitting
Thank
all
you.
of
Great
them.
questions. Yeah.
Let's kick it off
Stop
with.
asking us if we're ever going to do this again. We
Yeah.
will not.
Yeah.
But we're so grateful.
Sorry,
It's
guys.
a lot of work,
Sorry.
y'all. All right, but
It's been so
shout
fun.
out to the hosts. Haven't they been doing so good?
Yes,
The hosts.
so
Those are
Yeah.
great.
good.
Yeah.
So fun.
Anyway,
Question number 1. Do you think that you can heal from things while being in a new relationship?
oof. You want me to take this one or you?
And also, I want to add, how can you determine if you're healed enough to enter a relationship?
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to? I'll do it.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So yes, you can. It's just harder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's harder because when you're in a relationship, so when you're fighting a cold, I'll use an example of a cold. When you're fighting a cold, you can still go to the gym. The doctor always says, hey, when you really need to avoid it is if you've got some chest stuff, because, you know, congestion, breathing, stuff like that, you're breathing heavy. You can go to the gym. But the doctor said, but if you got to get healthier faster, don't go.
Mm.
Because you want all of the nutrients in
Right.
your body
Yeah.
to go towards fighting that virus,
Okay.
not fighting that virus plus building and repairing muscle
Right.
tissue.
Yeah.
And so when you're not in a relationship and you're healing, you're giving your body an opportunity, your soul an opportunity to focus all of its energy
Yeah.
on getting better.
Right.
And healing, the way healing happens, by the way, yes, there's therapy, but healing really does take place in the presence of God. Like you need a lot of time with the Lord.
Yes.
You need
Yeah.
time alone. There's just some things that can only happen when you're in solitude, which
Yeah.
is a big part of our faith as well, being alone. So, to the first question, yes, you can, plain and simple, but it just takes longer. You got to be more intentional. You got to put in extra work. If you're not seeing a therapist, you got to go see a therapist.
Mhm.
You might have to set some boundaries. You might have to apologize to your spouse beforehand.
Yeah.
You got to at least be aware of your triggers.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you ever tapped somebody on the shoulder, or someone ever tapped you on the shoulder to give you a dap, like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And they don't know that you were at the beach this weekend.
Oh yeah.
And the moment they touch you, you're all like, "God,"
Ah, worst feeling.
right? And then we get mad at that person.
Yeah.
But why didn't we communicate to that person that we were sensitive?
Yeah.
Mm.
That's on us.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so when you've been hurt, you have a responsibility to at least be aware of what part of your body is still wounded,
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah.
so that you can communicate to your partner, "Hey, don't touch me there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't healed from that yet."
Right.
You got to be able to communicate that. That's the first part.
Yeah,
Is
and I
when-
think I was gonna say too, to add to that part too, is like, and don't. I feel like sometimes we make excuses like, "Oh, I'm hurt here, so like, don't."
Yeah.
You know, but it's like, okay, but you still got to take ownership
For
and work
sure.
on that. But also, if you're like not just married, but let's say you're dating, make sure you're clear about that from the beginning.
Mhm.
And like you said, just keep working on it. But something you talked about in your message too is that if you rebound, like if you do it too quick, then you end up repeating.
Yeah.
Right.
So just be aware of that. Like if you get too quick into the next relationship, you might repeat those same mistakes because you didn't have time to heal.
And that's great, babe. And to the second part of that question, how do you know if you've healed enough? Was
Yeah.
that right?
Mhm.
So I think you have to redefine healing. Healing doesn't mean when you think about it, it doesn't hurt.
Mhm.
Because I don't think that, depending on what happened to you,
Yeah.
when you were 12, maybe we were joking about that. It really hurt then. Now you're 28, 32, 38. You look back and you go, "What was I crying for?"
I know.
Yeah, for sure.
So dumb of me.
Yeah, it's real.
But there's some things that that hurt and they're gonna hurt forever.
Yeah.
And so to be healed doesn't. So you gotta redefine healing. To be
Yeah.
healed doesn't mean when I think about that, it doesn't bring emotions.
Mhm.
I would say let's break up healing into two categories. Let's say, have you forgiven them? So let's start there. So if somebody's hurt you, my first question would be, have you forgiven them? And forgiveness is, have you released them of the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the best definition of forgiveness I can come up with. Like, you don't want that person to suffer a punishment. Like, you are relieving them of the consequences. That's really what forgiveness is. You have a debt to pay. What you do was wrong. Forgiveness is not, and we probably should do a whole sermon on forgiveness this year, but
For real.
forgiveness is not, you didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is not, I'm sorry. Forgiveness is, you did something wrong. You deserve to be punished.
Yeah.
But I am relieving you of the punishment. So are you at that point where you have removed the desire for punishment from that person? So there's that. If every time you think of that person, you're like, fire from heaven, like fall down, like, you know, knock out the teeth of the wicked. Like, there's some prayers that David puts there. I'm like, bro, let it go, bro.
Yeah.
You know, but even then, God gives him so much grace to be able to pray that authenticity, which I love that too, because even though David is saying, punch out the teeth of the wicked, he's not saying, give me the strength to punch the teeth out. He's saying, you do it. You do it. And it's really saying, vengeance is mine, says the Lord, it's yours in your hands. So there's that. And the other half of forgiveness, of healing is, but did you learn? Did you learn? Or healing is, did you learn? So I think, did you learn what got you there? Like you preached, the good lessons and not the bad lessons.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up question to that, how I know if it's a good lesson or a bad lesson, doesn't line up with the Word of God.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it's a lesson that lines up with the Word of God, it's a good lesson. So I would break healing into two parts. I would say, have you forgiven? And did you learn? And, you know, maybe if I had a third, what I love about podcasts is we're making all this stuff up as we go along. So I'm thinking this up right now. I'm like a third, because I'm thinking about all the relationships that I've seen people get into. I'm like, oh, they're not healed yet. Have you stopped projecting?
Right.
That would be it. I would know you've healed if you're not projecting the last heartbreak onto this one. That's a great sign that you've healed.
When it comes to spending time with God when you're going through a breakup, does that change from spending time with God when you're flourishing? So, like, do you want to spend more time in the Psalms? Like, what are some actionable things for somebody that is going through a heartbreak right now? Like, 10 minutes in prayer, 10 minutes in the Psalms. Like, how should they spend time with God?
You're asking me right now. Right now, I'm on a kick in my prayer life of contemplation. So right now, everything's contemplation
Right.
for me.
I love it.
Which,
yeah.
if you are not familiar, it means to sit in the love of God.
Yeah.
Not to ask, but to sit and be aware of his love for you. And I think that's powerful. I do love the Psalms. You got to read David's Psalms. David going through heartbreak, going through loss. I love how real he is.
Yeah. It feels like a small group because you're not alone.
Yeah, Psalms 88 is a big one. The one I recorded today, and it gives you just permission to be honest. Job's prayers are powerful. What I love about Job's story is that at the end of the story, when God corrects Job's friends and honors Job, God's indictment against his friends was their lack of honesty. His friends were always like, hey, don't pray like that. How dare you talk to God that way? You're the one to blame, not God. But Job was always like, but I'm hurting. And he needs to know that I'm hurting. And he needs to know that I'm mad at him. And he needs to know that I'm angry at him. And God's like, what I loved about Job was his honesty.
Yeah,
so
so
God would rather have the honest, raw you
Right.
that maybe is even a little indignant than the pretend fake you. So, you know, being real with the Lord. And then when you're sitting in the love of God, I just think that's he just gets to kind of refill your cups. That's been my time with him lately. I just think also your prayers are just way more powerful, like passionate when you're going through. You know, the Bible says that I don't know if you got to quote that. I don't know if we got to use that verse in.
No, we didn't.
We were like, how are we going to put this in?
Yeah.
But the psalm where it says the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. He draws to it.
Yeah.
Right.
He's drawn to the brokenhearted.
Yeah, so
so I
good.
think we pray different when we're brokenhearted.
Yeah.
I think we sing different when we're brokenhearted.
The best
Experience
songs are
it
made.
different.
when
And
you're
it's not that
broken.
God, best song, yeah, right? Like if a psalm is a song and a prayer is a song, right? A version of it. Some of our favorite song, Adele has made her entire career
Oh, literally.
on heartbreak.
100%.
Yeah, so like her next relationship, like she hopes, I think, if I her, it doesn't work out, so I can have another platinum album.
Right.
Completely.
Yeah, she just rolls in there. Shout out to Adele if you're out
An
there.
artist.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so there's something that comes out of you in the breaking.
Yeah.
And so I just think you just pray differently.
I think the key is like getting back to a place of like the fear of the Lord. because like all of wisdom literature in the Old Testament, like the keystone of that is like fear the Lord and obey his commands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like if we can, like, no matter what we're going through, if we can learn to like have a reverence towards God and
Yeah.
really
Right.
get into that, I think he's gonna like only open up new doors for you and show you like that there is a hope for your future.
Yeah.
And I think when you're going through that, it's an opportunity to find healthy ways to deal with the healing in your life. Like
Yeah.
have healthy habits to heal.
Yeah.
So that way when you are in a new relationship and there are triggers that happen, I know that's what happened to me. I was single for 4 years.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm super healthy. I've been single for 4 years,
For
not
sure.
entertaining anything. I barely dated in the 4 years and I was in therapy. I had great community. But no matter as much work as I did, when I stepped into getting to know someone, all these triggers came up. But because I had healthy habits in place to deal with the things that were in my heart,
Yep.
I didn't project, I shared, I communicated, but it was still on my own to go to
Yeah.
God and to
Right.
process it with the Lord,
Yeah.
to go back to therapy, talk to my
Yeah.
therapist, find ways to deal with it and to walk in that healing. But
Yeah.
that happens, like how you mentioned, when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
And in that heartbreak, you have the opportunity to start fresh and like,
Yeah.
okay, if I've experienced heartbreak before, I'm experiencing it again. What can I do differently in this heartbreak that I
Yeah.
didn't do in the last
Yeah.
one?
If I could add to
Yeah.
that too, going back to that question about like, hey, it's okay, I'm in a relationship. How do I know if I'm healed?
Mhm.
I would say also like, it's not that if you, it's hard to know am I healed or not healed. Are you at least aware? Like you were aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and as I'm hearing you, I'm like, you know what? She was aware though. She knew
was,
what was
yeah.
still sensitive. She knew I was. You gotta be at least at that point.
Mhm.
I am aware, and then not expect the person that you're with, to Zach's point, the person you're with to be the salve, to be the balm,
Yeah.
to be the thing that mends.
Yeah.
Because that person is, you just
Yeah.
unfortunately
Right.
or fortunately, however you look at it, people are not designed.
Yeah.
You can
preach about being the resource. God is
Yeah,
supposed to be your
yeah.
resource.
Yeah.
God definitely uses people to heal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But you can't go to people for
Right.
healing.
Mhm.
People
Yeah.
are a tool for healing, but they're not a source of healing.
Yeah, that's right.
So
That's good. So our next question is, words hurt. How do you help your brain work through what was said to you or about you?
people say a lot of stuff about us now, and I always want it to not hurt.
You know,
Still hurts.
to answer this question, my son actually came up to me the other day, and he was like upset because he's on a basketball team.
I think we
and
shared
there
the
was
story last
Did
week.
we?
Say it again. It was good.
Oh, I don't remember.
I shared it.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, but
okay.
it was good.
Okay, so then I don't remember what you shared, but he was upset because these kids were saying something about him. And the thing that came to my mind was the fact that, like, you don't realize this when you're a kid. Everybody is like your BFF. Like, you just think to yourself, you know, if we become friends, we're best friends forever. Like, I don't know why because you're just so innocent as a kid. You just love everybody. But then as you get older, you realize there's levels to this. You know, there's like the inner circle. And then, you know, there's acquaintances, and then there's friends, and then there's like your family and like your spouse, you know? And so I was trying to encourage him, like, you can't just let every thing that's said about you just like pierce your heart. Cause I'm like,
Yeah.
do you even really know these kids that well? And he's like, no. And I'm like, so then why does it bother you? I'm like, you should listen to what mom and dad say about you because we're the ones that know you and we love you the most. And so, like, when someone says something hurtful, like, and he mentions that in the beginning about, like, sometimes he wishes that it didn't bother him. Like, these people are on, like, social media. I'm like, they don't really know us.
Yeah.
You know, whenever someone posts something or they say something mean, I'm like, that is like, I do not care. And I don't because I'm like, you don't know me. It's like, why is that different than if I'm walking the street and like a random person just starts yelling at me? I'm like, they don't know me, so I'm not gonna take it personal.
Right.
But what really helps is like, I'm not gonna listen to it. Like, that's why it's so important that you know who you are in Christ, because He really knows who you are. He's like in the inner circle, and you know that when you read the Word. What does He say about you? You're fearfully and wonderfully made. So you hold on to that, so that whenever someone says something hurtful that you know isn't true, you're just like, I'm gonna just dust that off because you know you're not in the inner circle. That's like God. God should be in the center, and you should listen to what He has to say about you. But anybody else who says something, if you know it's not true. My dad one time said that to me. There was these kids in high school that were like saying random things
yeah.
about me that weren't true. And I remember I came home crying, and he's like, "Is that true?" I won't even say what they were saying about me, but he's like, "Is that true?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Then why do you care?"
Yeah.
You know, like, don't let it hurt you.
Yeah.
If it's true, then maybe it's something you need to work on.
Yeah.
That's different. But if it's not true, then don't let it bother you.
Yeah.
What if it's your husband
Yeah.
saying something to you?
Right.
Like, then it's like, oh,
Oof.
Yeah.
that's
That's
different
hard.
from like somebody on social media. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so
I mean,
true.
I think every husband and wife needs to know that there are not a lot of people who have the access to my heart, which is why it bothers me sometimes the social media stuff because I'm like, this shouldn't bother me. I know it doesn't bother
Right.
me, and then I'm like, it doesn't bother me, but like,
Then you
does
think about it as
I'm
you're
like,
going
it
to
doesn't
sleep.
bother me
Yeah.
because I actually
Right.
I have
Replying to
learned.
the comment, I'm like, "What are you doing?"
I have learned. Saying, I was going to ask you because you got more
Yeah,
people that
100%.
follow you than me. And so, so you can't give everyone access to your heart.
Yeah.
It's like a key,
Yeah.
and you can only give that key to the people who are in your corner, to the people who love you, trust you, and unfortunately, your husband and wife should be one of those
Right.
people.
Yeah.
So I tell her all the time, I'm like, hey, not what everyone says, not
Whatever.
everything that everyone says is gonna get me, but what you say
Yes.
will. So if you could just
Be careful.
think
Right.
twice
Yes.
about the things you say, because what I don't want is to block this off.
Right. That's
So
what
if-
ends up happening.
If I'm in a relationship with someone and a spouse, and the solution can't be cut them off.
Right.
It's got to be communicate to them the importance of their
Right.
words. We have
How
this
much
word
weight
in
they hold.
Spanish.
Yeah.
It's called confianza.
Yeah.
And it would translate in English. It would roughly translate to like, I've spent so much time with you. There's a level of comfort that you can just say what you want with me and not think twice about it. And while that may be beautiful in some ways, the fact that I can walk around the house without my makeup, or that I can walk around the house in my PJs and my underwear because I don't care what you think of me, that still can't stop you from caring about what I think you're thinking.
Yeah.
And so you have to really, even the longer you've been with someone, the more you have to fight for that. Where I gotta have this reverence still in the words that I say, because I know that my words are gonna hit them in a deep way. And the same way that you block out criticism is the same way you block out praise. And so there are a lot of people who will come up to me at the end of a message and be like, "Oh, that was good, that was good, that's good." And I'm grateful for all of those stories. But if I'm honest, I've blocked so much of that out because I can't let in the good and keep out the bad. Right? It's an indiscriminate bouncer. You're going to keep out the bad with the good.
Yeah.
And so I also go to her and go, "Hey, you're really like one of the 5 people who can encourage me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So encourage me. So encourage me
Right now.
'Cause right now.
Yeah,
Because you're one of the 5 people who have the power to encourage me
Right.
and to tear me down. So I need that from you."
Yeah, I had a problem with that too when we first got married, because the way I was grew up in my home, like, we just said what we thought.
Yeah.
And I remember calling you a name that, like, I will not even say because it's just not good. But I remember the look on your face, and I just in my heart and in my mind, I just thought I was helping him by telling him, like, you need to work on this.
Yeah.
But I said, you are blank. And when I saw the look on his face, I was like, oh gosh. And he communicated to me at that point, just like he's talking about now. And he's like, your words hold so much weight. And then I realized if you're the person that's saying hurtful things to your spouse, like, your words hold weight. And whatever you say, your words are powerful. And like, so if I'm calling him that, that's what he's going to become. So I need to do the opposite. I need to call him higher.
Right.
Call him something great. You are just trustworthy, like we were talking about in the sermon. Like, saying words that are going to call them higher. Not that you don't have to lie, but tell them the good things, but don't be. And you need to be honest with your spouse if they're doing something that they need to work on, but you got to be careful how you talk.
And then I think it's Proverbs that those who love it will eat its fruit. So words are the power of life and death, and those who love them will eat its fruit. So even your words are seeds.
Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to like find the thing to speak life about in your spouse. You just got to find, and you got to speak it so you can create that spirit, that atmosphere,
Momentum,
that
yeah.
soil, that
Right.
ecosystem
Yeah.
of life-giving language. So you got to go first.
Right.
If you're in a relationship where your husband and wife is speaking negatively to you, breaking your heart with their words, you got to go first with your words, and you got to speak life while communicating that their words are hurting you.
Right.
You don't retaliate with more words.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
That's
sure.
big.
So different words.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And if you're the one that normally says something negative, it's like, okay, before you speak, try to think about one thing that you like about them.
Mhm.
And I think when you start to do that, it like really renews your mind to be like, okay, I actually do love them. I care about them. I
Yeah.
do see them
Yeah.
on a
I
whole different
actually
level.
do love them.
Yeah.
There's
Because
Give me that reminder.
right,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
like
it's
we all
true.
have what's called a negativity bias. So you
Right.
can
So true.
like be told 9
Yeah.
amazing things about you, but then if you're told one negative thing, you're going to focus
You're
on
harping
that
Right.
on
right.
that negative one. So if we learn to like shift that mindset a little bit, I think it's huge.
That's
So
good.
good.
Next question. Where do I start with check-ins on my husband after he opened up about porn addiction?
Mm,
So it needs to be a communicated plan.
right.
Did you want to take this?
No, go ahead.
It needs to be a communicated plan. Y'all got to sit down and have a plan.
Yeah.
What you can't do is your husband opened up and, all right, well, let's hope it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Hope is not a plan.
Right.
Hope is not a plan. And so don't, John Maxwell says, don't hope to it, hop to it.
Mm.
Like you got to just make some action.
Right.
You got to do some things. And so we had a very clear plan
Yeah.
when it all happened. She was like, all right, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, here's what we'll do. I'll invite any type of accountability that you want. So we downloaded the software that we talked about, Covenant Eyes. It's a great software. I recommend it. I have
We did check-ins. Like I think it was started out once a week.
check-ins were like once a
Yeah,
week on
and then
Fridays or date nights, and then you would ask me how we was going, and I
Right.
would share with you what we were doing. And then it was different for everybody. I think
Right.
for me, there were things I needed to cut out that she made clear. So even like Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
like she asked me, hey, I don't want you to click on any female's profile.
Right.
Yeah.
Just don't even click on profile. You
Yeah,
don't
'cause
even need to click
sometimes
on profile.
that looks like porn, to be honest. Like
Some people's
Yeah.
somebody's
profiles,
ins-
yeah.
Yeah.
And so don't even profile. So like I don't respond to the DMs. I don't click on the profiles, and it was something that needed to be done, and I was okay with. I wanted to do everything that I thought I needed to do. So if I'm the offender, so the language that I would use is offender, offended. If I was the offender, I would put out everything that I want to do that I know is a hazard for me. I cut out certain types of movies, certain type of music, certain type of social media accounts, and then I would ask her, and is there anything else that you need me to do?
Yeah.
What do I want to do? So if I'm the offender, I'm like, what will give you peace of mind? What do we have to do? And then I would say, if it's your husband, like, don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. Like, well, I'm afraid of his answers. I'm afraid of his response. But like, ask him anyway, and just make it safe. Make it safe for him to be open, to be honest,
Right.
and then don't stop asking.
Yeah.
Just don't stop asking.
Yeah, and about making it safe, I think that's super important if you're the spouse of the person, because you don't want them to like just close off to you. If every time they tell you, like maybe you do a check-in and then they tell you, yeah, this happened, and you start bugging out over it, they're not gonna want to talk to you again. And so we had talked about it in one of the other podcasts, just acknowledging, well, that hurts that you did that. But you're better than that, and encouraging them as well. But just being careful again with your words, because that person holds the key to your heart.
Yeah.
So you got to be really careful with that.
And you got to be okay. Again, you got to be okay with all the questions. If you're the one who offended, you got to be okay with all the questions and just answer them best you can.
We started out too with check-ins. I think it was like once a week, and then when
You got
things started
further and
further
further apart.
along, then they got further and further apart. Exactly. Once we felt like there was more trust built.
Yeah.
That's good. Next question is, what advice would you give a couple who's overcome infidelity but still struggles with doubt?
But still struggles with doubt. I wonder what they mean when they say doubt. Like doubt that God can heal, doubt that the person's changed, doubt that the relationship will ever be the same.
I think doubt that what do you think? I thought
it's
I
more
had
of
it in
a
a
trust question.
Yeah,
Like
more
that
trust.
they decided to stay in the relationship,
Yeah.
but they still can't shake what happened. Like I don't think
Yeah.
they're able to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess my advice would be don't expect things to be the same. They're never going to be the same. But not the same doesn't mean worse.
That's good.
Not the same doesn't mean worse. I could just give you hope. Like I preached this on only the last sermon. It won't even be on YouTube. But like a month or 2 months ago, I can't remember. Maybe it was further. Liz looked at me and she just said something that like I almost cried right there. And she told me, she's like, "Hey, you know, I just realized." She's like, "I can't remember the last time I wondered what you were doing." And it just dawned on me that I haven't thought that in a long time. Like it took years, and she had gotten to a place years after where I don't even remember the last time I worried about you. Like, I doubted you.
Wow.
So, like, I would just, in the book that we're writing, the first chapter comes from Lamentations, where Jeremiah is speaking to the exiles. And there's a verse where he goes, dare to hope. Dare to hope. So the first chapter is called Dare to Hope.
Cool.
That's
Like,
good.
the exiles know that they're there because of what they did. By the time Lamentations comes around, they're all like, yeah, we messed up, served other gods, it was bad. But even though they are taking ownership for their actions, they are still daring to hope that tomorrow is going to be a better day,
So
that
good.
God is not done with them yet. And so I would tell that person who's on the other side of infidelity, dare to hope.
Yeah.
Dare to hope
That's really
that
good.
it can not just be repaired, but that it can be better.
Better, yeah.
That the intimacy that a couple feels post infidelity is some of the most intense, some of the most passionate, sincere intimacy. And I mean sex as well in that. Not that sex is the only form of intimacy, because true intimacy is about being fully known. So when there was a secret, one person was feeling like, we're doing this, but you don't really know me. And the other person was picking up on that vibe, like they're hiding something. I don't know what it is, but it's not clicking. But when someone is fully naked, like on the inside, you know everything that I've done and and mistakes I made, and that person is being vulnerable and accepting them and all their flaws. There's just this like, you are accepting me for all of my mess ups. It's just one of the most beautiful, most powerful experiences you'll ever have. And it doesn't mean that there aren't consequences. It doesn't mean that there's not trauma, but it can still be beautiful. Like I tell people who've experienced loss and grief, it'll never be the same, but same doesn't mean worse.
Yeah.
It can be better.
Yeah, I think too, when I think about it, is if you're having doubts, then my question is, are you both putting in the work? Is the offender doing what we talked about in the sermon? Owning, the acronym was owning up to it. Are they doing all the work? But then also, are you doing the work too? Again, that's why we're writing this book, because when you're married and you're experiencing this, there's something you as a spouse can do too. And that's giving it to God daily. Of course, you're going to doubt sometimes, but that's why you give your broken heart to God daily, so that he could remind you that you, like you said, that there's hope, and that you just keep forgiving that person. If they're putting in the work, like if you're doing everything that you can, then good. And now just hope and believe that God is going to repair that relationship. And like you said, it'll be better. It'll be better also because you learn the skills to get through a difficult time. And that just gives you hope, knowing that if something happens again, well, we got the skills now, so, we've done this before. Not that this problem will happen again, but if another situation were to come up.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I remember us driving, and I was like, babe, I think God loves me more than you love me. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, that's obvious, right? But I was like, no, something just hit me, I was like, because he said he would never leave me nor forsake me. I was like, but I wouldn't blame you if I could not shake this. Like, I just had to ask her this question. If I can never be free from this, would you leave me? And I waited for the answer. And she was like, do you remember what you said?
Nope.
I'll never forget it. You were like, it depends. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, it depends if I can tell you're trying. And then I thought, oh my gosh, like that's God too. God will never leave you until you decide I'm not trying anymore.
So good.
It's not that he loves me more than you. Y'all have that same, he does love you more than you, but y'all have that same line. I'm going to love you as long as you're working and trying to love me back. But if you want to walk away from this, I love you enough to let you go.
Right.
And so as long as you're putting in the work and trying, God will never leave you. And as a spouse, you got to look at that and go, I can see he's trying. I can tell she's trying. I can tell they're putting in the work. They've had a mistake, they mess up, but they're repenting to me in tears. I can see that they went 3 months, 4 months, 5 months before a relapse moment. I can see that they're going to therapy. They haven't missed a small group meeting. They haven't missed a Sexual Addicts Anonymous meeting yet. Like, as I can tell that you're trying.
Celebrate those wins too.
I can love you. I can be your.
Yeah, I think it's important to celebrate the wins too. If you're faithful in the little, like the Bible talks about that. So celebrate that. I was speaking to someone just a couple weeks ago that she was like, I don't know what to do. My husband just came out to me that he was struggling with pornography. And I'm like, okay, but just think about how hard that was that he came up to you.
Right.
Like, think about that.
Yeah.
That must have been so difficult for him.
Yeah.
So commend him for that. What did he do wrong? Yes, but he came out to you. And what's happening now? He's gonna go to therapy. Okay, that's
Yeah.
good.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's a big
that's
deal. He's
great.
working on all
Yeah.
the hard things. Is he praying? Yes, every day. Okay, well,
In a small
it's
group.
going somewhere. Exactly. He joined a
Yeah.
small group.
Joined a
He's
small group.
doing a lot of things. So just give him props for that. I know you're hurt.
Yeah.
I'm not taking away from that, but celebrate that because that'll encourage
Love that.
your spouse too.
Yeah. This is just a smidge of wisdom that we're getting in your new book. I know it's going to bless so
Oh,
many
thanks, Zach.
people. Can't wait for that. One more question, if that's
Yes.
cool. How can you tell if the trials within your relationship are God saying to fight or give up?
I was gonna ask you that question
Yeah,
because we were talking about heartbreak, and I'll answer it as well. But your story with Gisela,
Yeah.
who's amazing,
Yes.
pregnant by the way,
Yeah.
couple months in,
19 weeks.
Let's
Come
go.
on.
Yesterday.
so
Yes.
excited.
Go.
It's gonna be great. Your story with her was like,
Up and down.
yeah, like I remember
Oh.
you guys telling me, I'm like, I might have not kept going after that, but you kept pushing. Like, how did you know?
Perseverance is key. I think that's really what it comes down to.
How
I
do you know to
heard the-
give up or
His
keep
heart
going
was
or go
set.
in? Give up or go in?
You know, I did give up at one point. So I was chasing after her for months and months, putting my all out. We lived in different states. I was visiting. I
Yeah,
was
yeah, I remember the
shooting my
story.
shot
Expensive,
constantly.
yeah.
That's expensive to
Yeah.
go visit.
Hey, but it was
You
worth
can only
it.
stay for church so many times. At some point, she's
That's
like,
true, that's true.
hey,
Yeah.
yeah.
and we hit a spot where I was like, you know what, maybe this isn't right. And I just kind of gave up for a few months, even though I was like confused because I thought like, man, I felt like God really said that she was the
Yeah.
one. And when I gave up, then she started noticing, and then that's when God spoke to her, and it was like, then she reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm in if you're in." I was like,
That's what she needed.
Like,
I'm
tell
ready.
her.
She needed to feel what it felt like to lose.
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
That's the same thing
Sometimes
here.
we're
Handle it.
wired that
No,
way.
it's
the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I don't know
happened
why
here.
we're like
I did.
that, but it's a
I was
thing.
like, same with her. She
Yeah.
was like, wow.
Because he knew. He was like, I know. And I'm like, well, I
And
don't.
I was like, fine, well, then I'm
Yeah,
out.
so
Yeah.
true.
I was like, I'm not gonna stay around to fall more in love with you and get my heart
Right.
broken.
Right.
And then like 3 days later, she
No, it was not.
Yeah.
It was not.
It's
It
like,
was
I just
not.
can't even
No,
handle it
21
What
without
was
days
the
of
question
prayer
again?
and
How
fasting.
can you tell?
How can you tell if the
Trials.
trials within your relationship are God saying to fight or give up?
Yeah, so there's already a relationship. So unlike our stories,
Yes.
right? It was we were trying to win them over.
Yep.
Which if that's your case, right, you want to just I would say let it go, and if it's God, he'll bring it
Yeah,
back.
yeah, 100%.
That's good.
So if you're married, and we talked about the 3 reasons for divorce, the 3 A's. Adultery, abandonment, and abuse. Those are the 3 biblical reasons for divorce. And so if it's outside of those 3, I think it's a clear, like, hey, stay in. This is a trial, but lock in. And why is that so important? I think I might have said this on one of the other podcasts. So because our relationship with our spouse is a mirror of Christ's relationship with us, and he does not leave us,
Right.
even though.
Yeah.
And so God doesn't want the church to lose that testimony of the image of salvation
Yeah.
and the image of relationship. He wants us to keep that. So it's important. If it's one of those 3 things and you're, well, let me answer the easier question. If you're dating
Yeah, yeah.
and this person, that's the easier question to answer, and this person is cheating on you, or this person is showing you a bunch of red flags, like, get out.
Right.
Like,
Well,
that
you
is
can.
the time to
Yeah.
get out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because then you can't get married
Yeah.
and be like surprised.
Right.
Like, told you so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
you
she
saw it.
literally showed
Yeah.
you. She literally showed you
Yeah,
who
yeah.
they were,
Right.
and you
Yeah.
got in anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so you knew what you were getting into. So those are the easy ones,
Yeah, yeah.
right? If it's not one of those A's, if you're dating and it's something like infidelity and faithfulness, you got to get out. That was the opportunity for them to show themselves, and you learned it, and you saw who they were. And by the way, someone is on their best behavior when they're dating.
Yeah, for sure.
That's true.
Like
So
they,
that's their best
so if
behavior.
that's their best behavior,
Right.
Yeah.
if that was them
That's
trying,
so
Be
true.
scared.
Yeah.
if that was them trying, what are they going to be like when they know they got it locked down?
Right.
So that's why you got to go in
Yeah.
those, in my opinion.
That's true.
Now, if it's one of those 3 A's, and you're asking yourself, do I still walk away? Suyani had a great
Yes,
line
I was gonna say
in the
that.
video.
Really good. So
She
wise.
said, "I knew that God could heal him
Right.
if I left or if I stayed."
Right.
And I knew that God could heal me
Right.
if I left or if I stayed. Then she said, I knew it was good. So Yanni, by the way, if you didn't see the video, it was a couple who was married for a couple of years. The husband was unfaithful. They shared their story on video testimony. She said, I knew that if I was going to stay, it was going to be hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I knew if I was going to leave, it was going to be hard. So then she said this. She said, so I really just had to choose my heart.
Right.
Yeah, that was so
good.
powerful.
I had to choose my heart.
Right.
And so that's you just have to choose your heart.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to go through the hardness of reconciliation,
Yeah.
or do you want to go through the hardness of divorce?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because they're
so true.
both hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do think that you have every biblical right to step away. So it's
Right.
not about biblical right at that point. I think that God is always pro reconciliation.
Right.
I do think that He's always pro reconciliation.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the heart for it, if you don't have the stomach for it, if you just can't go through it, and then God opens the door, you know,
Yeah.
and He goes, hey, if you want to walk through, but it's what kind of hard do you want to go through,
Right.
and then you just got to make that decision. I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer at that point. I would always push toward reconciliation. I just don't know everyone's story.
Yeah.
So especially if there's abuse involved, I just don't know everyone's story. So you really got to lean into the Holy Spirit and see where He's leading you. Here's what I know about God. He loves us too much for us to get too far from His perfect will for our life. And He has a beautiful way of redeeming stories. And so if I'm praying, if I'm bringing in wise counsel, and then whatever decision I make at the end of that, now again, it has to be aligned with Scripture. So it's one of those A's have been checked. If I decide to walk away or if I decide to stay, and it came after counsel, prayer, meditation, I think whatever you decide,
Yeah.
I think God's going to be glorified in a way because you're doing the best that you can with the information that you have. And it's a faith journey at the end of the day. There is no certainty. How did I know I made the wrong decision? How did I made the right decision? I don't know those things, but I know God.
Yeah.
And I know God is good, and I know
Yeah,
God
that's
can
right.
turn things around.
Right. Yeah. And again, it's going back to, are you trying and are they trying? Like what we've been saying this whole time too. Are you both trying?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, does that person want to put in the
Right.
work to
Yeah.
reconcile? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah. So good.
This has been awesome, guys.
This is it.
Thank you
It's the last
so much.
podcast.
That's
That's
it.
it.
Come on. Oh,
He's coming
I
out with
feel
a
like
book,
we
by the
needed to
way. He
do-
wouldn't say it because he's not a promoter, but he's coming out with a book. It's gonna be a good one.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us for 4 weeks of our Love, Sex, and
Yes.
Marriage
Yes.
series. Thank you, Pastor Jayleen and Pastor Liz, for
Thank you guys.
always encouraging us with this series and helping us do relationships the right way. We can't wait for the book that's going to come out so we can continue being encouraged. But it doesn't have to end here. You can stay connected with us throughout the week by downloading our app, which is Journey ORL, or even following us on Instagram at Journey ORL, or by subscribing to our YouTube channel. We can't wait to see you guys. Actually, never, because we're never going to be back. We'll see you on Sunday.
See you on Sunday.
You can always
See you
watch
on
on
Sunday.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.